Okay, so this should now be live. A very impromptu um live stream. Let me just continue sharing the link on Instagram, and then we will start doing a very relaxed painting, hopefully. Let's go something like this. And post it to ye old Instagram stories. We are live. Let's go with that. Impromptu stream. Change the color to black. I know that this is the most interesting of starts, but I just want to get that up, and then I will continue with, or I will start the stream proper. Cool. Right, that is now set up. Let's go to the reference on my phone. Start playing some music, although very, very quiet, so it's not too distracting. And right, we're starting. So, impromptu Friday night stream. I have been under the weather this week, mainly with pain in my feet, but I'm sure I'll talk about that a lot. And unfortunately missed Monday's slot because various issues with sort of trying to prepare. Lots of power cuts, lots of internet dropping with the weather at the moment. So it seems stable today, and I thought, why not? Let's just do a quick stream. A stream of someone from the Kenya reference. As far as I know, this person is called Blue, or at least that's what they're called on that reference chat. So that's as far as I know of this character, but we're gonna just get started. Just wanna attach a border clip as to keep that paper tighter. Cool, it's better. Right, and let's start. So it's not been a massively productive week in terms of work or painting. I have, however, sort of got all of the shipping side of things done, so everything has been sent out. Whether or not it will be anywhere in time with the ongoings at the moment, in the UK, we will just have to wait and see if anything's actually going to get anywhere. But the important thing is that they've been sent out, and that's all that matters. It's starting to put some shapes down with this. One of the interests of this reference is definitely sort of the balancing of all the greys that's going to have to happen. sort of quite a lot of warm greys in this sort of reflective part of this shadow where the sort of skin is reflecting back into it, sort of makes it very purpley to come. Whereas the wool in general definitely has this sort of quite grey overtone of light being cast. So it'll be interesting to see how to balance this painting, sort of navigating through those many greys with this sort of reduced palette that I've been using quite a lot. So we will hopefully learn something about the palette as we go on. Just hopefully starting to ascertain parts of this drawing to be working. I think that the forehead needs to come up now that I've started to describe some of this. So let's just knock in where this head is. Yep, that's sort of working. But yeah, definitely been having a lot of interesting sort of use with this palette. There's a few things that I can't quite show at the moment because either they're not quite ready, or I'm sort of waiting to show things at the right time within work. But I've just been, over the last couple of days, I've been working on a painting that was one of the main pieces that I first started using this palette on, and I probably would have started using that I would say around August sort of time, and today painting on that same painting, which I've not looked at for quite a while. It's just been really interesting to sort of see how much more I can know the palette and sort of how much more I can reach with it, which is, you know, definitely a good sign, that the palette sort of has depth beyond its immediacy of the initial mixes. I've also sort of been enjoying using it in a sort of indirect manner as sort of just working on things with stains once things are dry to sort of get effects and sort of explore with that. So I am definitely enjoying what's happening within those paintings, and hopefully one of the first paintings will be able to show before the end of the year. That's my sort of hope. But other than that, sort of just ticking away with work. Various paintings. And let's putting this ear in. Important sort of point of this ear is like trying to get this correct level of turn that the ear is sort of showing, alongside with just this teeny tiny bit of the ear that is showing just at this side of the cheekbone, just so we can sort of get that correct off angle with the face, how the face is ever so slightly not directly looking at us. Sort of a lot of that is being told by the ears in this sort of scenario, so getting them put down in that correct orientation will definitely help. This area of the top of the head is definitely confusing as well at the moment, so hopefully that will be more describable with value rather than line, I think, when it comes to this area. But we will see. Now let's start knocking in this eyebrow and bringing it down. Finding that edge of the socket. The beard starts there, or that's where I've said that starts ish. The nose must be about there, and then let's bring that back down. Something, yeah, that's sort of starting to relate in a way that I'm quite happy with. Quite a full mustache as well. Something like that, maybe. It's hard to definitively say if something is correct at such a stage like this, because it's so subject for change. But it does have to, you sort of do have to come to a point where it's like, no, I'm saying that this is right enough that I can start using it as a more solid reference point to sort of plot out where the other features are. But sort of starting to look at least a little bit like a face, which is a good start for a portrait painting. No, good start if it looks like a face. Now let's find this line of this cast shadow so it goes in and then sort of slow curve out until it hits the bottom of the eye bag and then goes into the eye. I'm sort of thinking that if this line is correctly describing the correct cast shadow that's falling onto this cheek, it should really describe the sort of turn of the form. So sort of paying close attention to that, I think, will be quite helpful to get some sculptural feels in this. The sculptural feels, man. In the face, but we'll cross that bridge as well when it comes to describing it with color. Something like that. Quite a small space between the eyebrow and the top of the eyelid. Now, let's start defining more of this. Let's actually start committing to some of these drawings and mark making to find more of this likeness. It's like, right, something like that. You can see this crew neck jumper through the beard at this intersection here, which makes this part of the beard darker. So that will be interesting to sort of describe correctly, I guess. But sort of, I think it's definitely important to try and establish, okay, oh, there's a shadow at this bottom part of the beard, like a darker value. And if I'm thinking of it as, oh, it could be the beard turning away, turning under, and receiving less light. I was like, oh yeah, that would make sense. But in reality, it's because the beard becomes translucent, or more translucent here, and then you can see the shadow sort of the jumper showing through. So having sort of understood what that is, it means that that will change the way that I approach that in painting. So I'll be sort of thinking, okay, I need to make a dark mark underneath. I need to paint this crew neck jumper in first to get that value, and then I need to then work the beard on top to get that correct effect of this undertone showing through. So I know that when it comes to the painting part of the sort of sketch, I will knock this crew neck in probably first, in order so it has enough time to sort of absorb into the paper, and then I can take that on later when I'm working on that section to then be able to work on top, because it should be dry enough at that point. Now, in the original image, there is a plug socket here. So he's obviously like sat on the floor, but I'm actually going to remove that plug socket because I think it would make it quite confusing in terms of trying to get this done within 2 hours. So I'm going to ignore that light socket and just focus on the main shadow shape that's being reflected into the wall. Again, sort of really trying to identify within these shadow shapes like what is being caused by what. So you've got this inner shadow shape here, which the light is sort of coming in from a steeper angle, like or a more high point of an angle coming through and causing this edge of the face. You sort of got the eyebrow, eyelash sort of here, and then the face sort of would continue off down here with this shadow shape. Whereas this shadow shape, there is a more intense light coming in from a sort of more parallel to the face sort of angle, and still a bit from above because you've got this cast shadow sort of going down, but then you can quite clearly see, and hopefully I'll be able to describe it clearly enough, but like you've got, this is the eyebrow, sort of the ridge of the eyebrow, and then it sort of comes down. You've sort of got eyelashes sticking out here as well, and you've got the, what I think is the cheekbone, and then the nose, and then the mustache, which cuts right back in, and then the lip, and then the beard. But again, sort of knowing that will sort of allow me to draw this in a more understood way, because I'm actually understanding, okay, what part of the shadow is correlating to what part of the drawing, and then as a result sort of trying to make them line up. So let's just, now that that's been observed, let's solidify that thought a bit more by actually knocking something in with a bit more of a permanence to work from later. So this comes in earlier and then out and then up, and the eyelash sort of comes out there quite strong for a shadow for an eyelash, but hey, doesn't matter. Oh, but yeah, definitely sort of been thinking recently as well about engagement of streams and sort of trying to improve that and sort of improve or sort of fiddle with that, I guess, a bit. Sort of think about how I can use streaming in the new year and stuff, and because I really enjoy or have really enjoyed streaming, and I definitely do really appreciate the sort of very set out time to be working, but the definitely have a challenge, a big challenge and a big prompt set up for January, and hopefully we'll have a few people involved with that, so that's sort of exciting. Definitely sort of looking forward to that. Start finding some of these shapes in the mustache as well. Bring that round. Now I've made that nose ever so slightly too big, I think. I just need to bring it down a little bit, but not on this side. No. Yep, that's sort of starting to resolve, I guess. Shape here. Let's find let's bring that over as well, in fact. Something, and then bring in this eyebrow edge just here. Now there's a lot of light pouring in to this eye socket directly, so not much shadow shapes to find, but definitely needing to find something. Hello Alex, thank you very much. Yeah, sort of working through. It's ref, it's not very far back in the Kanyo public ref. I didn't expect exactly spend a lot of time trying to find a reference before jumping in. I just sort of wanted to draw, wanted to chat as well, so thought a stream would provide both elements of that. Now let's bring this eye in somewhat like that, and then I can find this shadow shape of the eye bag as it comes. No, yeah, I sort of occasionally will go through the folders and just go for hours, feel, or at least it feels like hours, and not come across anything and then other times it'll be like, oh no, wait, yeah, this is like the third picture I've seen, and I'm interested in trying that, and it's definitely sort of when I feel that it happens quickly, I feel like it's just proving that I'm in the right sort of mindset to paint, because it's like, yep, doesn't matter really what it is, I just want to try and solve something within painting. So let's bring in that ear a bit more. And then find that sort of shape. But yeah, definitely like the idea of impromptu streams. Just need to sort of have that as more of a response, I guess. Sort of, it's like, oh, I don't really know what to do. Sometimes it should be helpful if it's like, yep, I should stream. That is exactly what I should do. But I'm sure that, well, I hope that will come in time. No. Oh. No, yeah, it really isn't that far down. Yeah, definitely didn't take too much searching. Let's start. This snapped my pencil, so just going to do some rough work on the shirt to try and bring back a point to it, so I can finish with the fiddly bit of the eye. But it will probably require sharpening. Let's find this collar as well. It's been a long time since I've drawn someone with a shaved head as well, but it's always quite fun, because I think to sort of resolve it in the manner in which I like to resolve paintings, you have to be quite creative in finding the texture, sort of finding the mark making, in order to give the idea that the hair is shorn to the scalp. But yeah, I don't think I've done one on paper as of yet, so sort of curious as to already trying to think about how to resolve that. Probably similar sort of manner as to resolving this transparency of the beard, by sort of priming a sort of local tone underneath first, in which I then will go and work on top of it to sort of bring in that texture. Now, definitely looking a bit monk, a bit of a monk, but that's no bad thing. Shadow shape here, which is being caused by the shadow of the lip, and then also the shadow of the beard, the soul patch, sort of causing this edge of the shadow here. So again, sort of establishing the fact that this is the shadow of the lip allows me to know exactly what sort of shape I'm trying to draw for a shadow shape. Bring that up. Something like that for the bottom lip. Bring that in. Bring in the other side of the soul patch. Now, this gentleman Blue grows a beard in a similar way to how I do, where it's disconnected from the mustache is disconnected from the sideburn area, which makes it quite easy to find these shapes because they are very separate. And then as a result, we sort of can get that feeling of transparency in the beards where we need it as well. Yep. It comes up something. Something like there, I heard. And again, there's this ever so slight, not direct look, it's sort of directly like that. It's coming out. It's very, very subtle. Sort of shown by the ears, but also shown by the eyes, I feel. So getting the eyes in the correct position will definitely help. Let's bring that sort of round. And then bring in this eye shape. Eyelash. Round, over, in. Now, let's leave the drawing there for now. I think that I want to resolve the eyes a bit more, but I also think that I'm just going to spend the time doing that with paint. So I'm going to take off my hoodie, punching my camera and knocking, making it shake. Sorry about that. But right, let's start throwing down some paint. One of the first things, as mentioned, I want to knock in a value for this crew neck. Now, definitely sort of one of the larger shapes in the portrait. It is a black crew neck, sort of almost in what I feel is direct sunlight. So definitely some like purple tones coming through. Just want to ever so slightly bring that down in value, just a smidge, and then sort of replace that chroma with that intense pink. And then let's give this a go for finding that's too dark for what that is. Let's bring a little bit more of this warmth into it, knocking it down, sort of a more suitable colour for the shadow shapes on this jumper. That's definitely more like it. Let's let's remove some of that paint here. Here we go. There we go. That is the sort of tonality that I'm looking for. Even maybe a smidge less. Less value. Still pushing up this warmth a little bit as well. Right, and let's go ahead and knock in this crew neck. Sort of still taking this time as well at this point, even though sort of I've given myself a pretty comprehensive drawing. Sort of I've definitely tried to resolve most moments of the painting to an extent. I'm still using this time to redraw and sort of refine shapes because I think that past me is an idiot at all times, and there are things that he would have decided, oh yeah, this is fine, and then it's not fine. So constantly sort of calling into question things that were once resolved now that more information has been put in. And let's just start knocking in this t-shirt or this jumper with quite big marks. Something like that. Now this is sort of one step down, this first shadow shape here. Let's crisp up this edge a little bit as well, but fade it out that side. Whereas this is definitely a much clearer shape of shadow to find. I still want that to be crisper. Something a bit more like that, I feel, and that's bringing that tiny bit that we can see there. Shadow shape there, so it extends down a little bit. Let's gradiate that out. Scrub this around to try and eliminate some of that texture. Not all of it, just a bit more than none, I guess. Bring that down, something like that. Now, whilst I'm here, gonna bring that in, and then finally come up to the beard with this shadow shape. Okay, that's sort of in, I guess. Now, so let's start blocking in the rest of the first pass. Just fuzz that up a bit as well, give it some scuzziness. Sort of don't want it to be applied too evenly, I guess. And burnish the paint a bit to give it sort of more of a texture, but sort of a confused texture, I guess. But let's keep the shadow shapes less noisy. Let's see. It is very interesting, like, because I'm painting on paper, and my studio has been very cold over the last few days. I've definitely noticed the paint taking longer to dry, but it's sort of got this weird, it's almost stodgy because it has been sort of slightly dried. Remembering that I use a fast drying white, which normally dries within about 24 hours. So it's been sort of semi drying for the last like 3 days or something. And now as a result, it's got this very dry feeling to it. But it means that once it's getting put onto this very absorbent surface of the paper, it's just very, very quick to pill up when you sort of work it in too much, which allows it to have this very interesting like matte finish. So yeah, hopefully we'll be able to play around with that a bit more throughout this painting. It's currently 10 to 9 in the UK, and I'm drinking black coffee, so I presume that I will be working on this for another I don't know, 2 hours, two a bit hours. So yeah, let's not dilly dally. Definitely want a bigger brush to start knocking in some of these bigger shadow shapes. Let's purple that up. Let's give this a go. That's not too bad. I definitely want to redraw elements. I definitely need to bring this space apart, which I think it's probably going to be resolving this eye a bit better. It's just all a bit incoherent at the moment, but we can remove some of that confusing information of the drawing, I guess, with this first pass. Just bring out that silhouette. Now, these shadow shapes are very, very blue in general. There are some very intense moments of warmth in them, but also they're quite mid in value. They're definitely not too high in value. So when I'm putting in the background, I definitely really want to keep that paint very fresh. As to keep it as light as possible to sort of put this value in the middle. Otherwise I feel like it might be red is too light, so definitely want to have this shadow, or this area where of the wall where the light is hitting, sort of contextualize this mid shadow tap value a bit. So let's knock that in, and then huge scoops of white, teeny tiny bit of orange because it's warm, but keeping that very pale. And also now trying to remove any excess sort of like paint from the middle of my brush, as to keep it light when I, in fact, I'm just going to use a fresh brush. Let's bring that down. Yeah, that's fine. Now let's that's pretty close to the value of the Moleskine page. Bring that around. It's ever so slightly cooler than the Moleskine page as well, so it's not exact. Let's drag it around a bit, sort of create fast texture with it, which you can't see now, but you'll see when I take photos of this later, because the camera isn't picking up the brush strokes. And let's just fuzz that out as well a bit. Yeah. Fuzz that out. Yeah. Okay, right. Now for the window frame, or what I think is a window frame that's causing this shadow. Again, we're working with very light shadows in this background, because there is just so much light pouring on, so it sort of requires this very subtle change in the very slight variations. I think this shadow shape I'm painting here on the right hand side of the ear, it's actually just shadow shape that's being caused by glass. So it's because that's the only thing I can sort of imagine it being. It's some sort of transparency on the glass, but it's millimeters sort of in difference in slight warmth compared to the opposite side, and I'm worried that because it's so close that it might just read as a mistake in value between the two shapes or two sides, so I might push that a bit to make it a bit more extreme, but we'll see how it is. to start off with. Bring in that separate shadow shape on the inner drawing again. So there's two shadows of the profile of the face being projected onto this wall, so separating those, hopefully we'll find that edge just a little bit better, that eyelash shadow shape. Now I'm just gonna have a quick block in here. This is sort of, this background is definitely another segment that I'd quite like to be dry before sort of pushing on with the painting's background too much, because I definitely want to have, and when I say dry, I mean like dry enough to apply texture and paint on top, because I definitely want to keep that lightness of the shadow being on the projected onto the wall, but it's yeah, needing it to be a drier surface than it currently is. Gonna start on the face. I'm also gonna put out some fresh white paint. I'm gonna treat myself to some fresh white paint. Now, as mentioned, I want to remove some of this prior drawing that I've done around the face, because it definitely needs a bit of a redraw, and I feel like if I was to go in at this point, I'd be too confused by the marks underneath. So I'm going to start trying to find some of these shadow shapes, but just really simplify the whole shadow group to start removing some of that information. Something like that. Let's knock that in. Bring that up. Let's just really knock a thin layer in across this entire side of the face in shadow, keeping it quite warm, and then I can bring that back out on top. And then let's do big moves within the area of the face which is receiving light, to sort of really simplify those shapes again. No. Yep, I think that's okay as a value. Maybe a tinsy bit warmer as there's a little bit of green in the brush, or sort of blue in the brush which made it green. Even warmer because it's quite a lot of, it's not that low in its chromatic value. It's better. And let's just put this in all over, trying to just separate the values. Let's bring that down, bring that across, bring that up. Knock in a local value for the shaved head. That's making things make more sense. Okay. Alright. Now, something purpley for this edge here. Okay, that works as well. Bring that down. Something like that. This is definitely why I don't wait until everything is resolved with just drawing before I'm painting, because I can feel the manner in which I draw, sort of a preempt for painting more than drawing. So they sort of don't look great as drawings, but they are more of a plan, I guess, for painting, in which the drawing then makes a bit more sense. But I like to sort of resolve both painting and drawing, I guess, within painting and that sort of space. Bring that down. Now, as always, if there are any questions, please do ask. Just re-establishing parts of this eye. Definitely don't want to keep don't want to sort of jump in too quickly to sort of re-resolving that eye, partly because I want to have had a look at this left eye before I make any sort of decisions, I guess, within the this left eye. Something like that for now. That sort of separates that value a bit, so it breaks down that drawing a little bit, so it's less to think about later. Let's knock in that value. Still here, yeah. Painting along on a different reference. Can't find your raw sienna. How can you lose your raw sienna? That feels terrible. I was reading about raw sienna the other day. Well, I was reading about sort of the pigment PR. I think it's PR 101. I'm not too hot on my pigment numbers. I think it was that, but essentially it's the pigment that burnt sienna is, but it's also the pigment that transparent red oxide is, and it's also the pigment that Venetian red is, and it sort of is a lot of different types of pigment or different types of paint from this one pigment, and it really does show you just how much the pigment can change, that, or sort of the paint can change even if it's the same pigment and it's just handled in a different way. Like Venetian red is PR 101, same as burnt sienna, but it's called Venetian red, I think, because Titian used to source his version of that pigment from Venice, so it sort of became Venetian red, but it's the same makeup as like burnt sienna, which is, yeah, it's sort of interesting how little sort of the paint needs to be changed, like, or the pigment number needs to be sort of handled in a different way to sort of make the pigment handle in, or the paint handle in such a different way. It sort of always makes me think about, like, well, have they tried this with like all the other pigments in order to make that work? Like, have they tried that with every pigment in a way of like trying to turn it into a lake, trying to make it transparent, sort of trying to expose it to different chemicals to sort of adjust the way it oxidizes or whatever process it goes through. I think someone said to me that, like, the way that you handle the cadmiums to get the different tonal or chromatic values of the cadmiums is that you are essentially like cooking them, or like for different lengths, and it sort of changes the properties. I think that the term cooking them is probably quite inaccurate, but sort of simplified for what the actual process is. But yeah, if anyone does actually know that and wants to explain it to me, then that would be fantastic. Now, one of the issues that I've had within the drawing, I think, is that there's not enough space on this right hand side of the scalp. So just sort of trying to extend that a little bit. Whilst extending that, though, I definitely want to maintain this sort of shape, though, because it comes up and then across, and then it's very round at the top. As the hairline starts to, or the sort of stubble starts to build up in densities, you start to look through it a bit. It causes it to be darker at the top. Now, something like that. That's okay. That's less wrong than I thought it was. Now it's just a bit smaller adjustment to make to sort of soften the decisions that I made earlier. And then I can move on to the second pass, which is not the second pass at all because it's all done in one segment, but sort of the second layer of mentality of painting, I guess. Now, I do want to bring that curve over. It feels a bit too asymmetrical at the moment. And it is asymmetrical, but not that asymmetrical. Let's find shape there. Let's see if I can knock in an eye. Now, this sort of beard angle that I've got here, yeah, okay, this beard comes up to the edge of the eyelashes. So, hello, Sophia. It's seen that you've been doing a little bit of sculpting or going back to sculpting on Instagram. It looks very cool. I have done very little sculpting, but the sculpting that I have done, I have very much enjoyed in the past. Definitely really fun to sort of use the material in that manner, sort of really get your hands in the mix, as it were. Now, it comes down ever so slightly. Bring in this shadow shape for the eye, up this chroma. And then, as mentioned earlier, there's not too much shadow shapes going in because it's sort of being blasted by light, but there is some definition around the eye. So started sculpting this year. Yeah, it's I mean that's one of the big issues, I guess, with sculpting is the space sort of required to doing it. Like most things, sort of my first want or decision making in any medium, sort of I am interested in working figuratively and sort of specifically from like people. So sort of when sculpting people, it's yeah, quite the it doesn't have to be, but it can be quite the space uh consumptive thing. But yeah, sort of full size busts and stuff are interesting exercises, fun to do, I think. Ooh, sculpting workshop. Do you know the artist who's running the workshop? I'm very fortunate, sort of teaching at the place that I teach in London, because it means that not only do I have a huge selection of very talented painters, sort of like near, um, that I can also go and do sort of courses with, or um, sort of drop in their lessons and stuff. I've also got like sculpting teachers and sculpting workshops that I can sort of tag along to if there's space, which is very fortunate. Um, in the new year, I think I'm going to look at some Japanese wood carving workshops that the Art Academy is running, because I think that would be very fun. Yeah, having it all in your room, like I've definitely gone through that phase, and yeah, I feel like now I couldn't do it in the same way that I did when I was sort of younger. Adult, do you wanna? Grzegorz, Grzegorz, she was Shawada, maybe. I only know that that's pronounced Grzegorz because I have an uncle called Grzegorz. Um, but fantastic. That's very exciting. Very exciting for you. Hopefully, it'll be interesting to see what you do at the workshop. Sort of when you come, find the time to put it on Insta. Now, just sort of trying to understand that for me to check if this sort of redrawing is correct, that I've got to sort of have some of the face in place in order to sort of describe it in context. Okay, that is as in focus as it's going to get. Right. So when I've still got all my messy brushes, I'm going to just finish knocking in the beard. Man, it's not an issue that I have too frequently with my palette, because I'm normally able to control it quite well. But this Photosylene turquoise blue really will get into some of the mixes that you're working with, and sort of tint them that an undertone of green. It's very very powerful color. No, yeah, always lovely to have some contemporary sculptures that you like. Um, you saw you saw my episode of Portrait Artist of the Year. Well, thank you very much for watching. I've still not watched it. At this point, I don't know if I will watch it. Because brains are very stupid, but I really enjoyed the experience. I will definitely sort of, I think, I think, I know for a fact because I saw it today that the deadline for the new one is like the 23rd of February. So, sort of planning to get a new self portrait done for before then to apply with to go back on, because I want to go on and do a better painting. Essentially, I sort of want to do a very, very good painting. Is sort of my want with that show. But no, yeah, quite like, it's always nice because when you afterwards, there is this sort of slow trickle, I guess, of people reaching out and talking about it and sort of saying, "Oh, I saw your portrait" and stuff, and it is always quite a humbling experience to have people talk about it. But it's I do think it's a really interesting experience to try. I think that the producers on it are wizards. They're amazing. Sort of working with very working with people who are really not from that sort of world of sort of being on show, I guess. And sort of trying to get them to feel comfortable. At least the two producers that I've had when on the show, definitely I feel have been very, very lovely people, very, very calming and sort of clear with what they want. So I definitely think that is interesting, sort of one of the interesting elements of the show. I'm very surprised, Sophia, that it's not sort of expanded beyond the UK, because as far as I understand, it's like one of Sky Art's most popular programs, and sort of given the fact that it is so popular, I would have thought that sort of other countries would have wanted the same opportunity to sort of involve themselves in the arts in that sort of manner. Because I'd definitely be interested in watching it in other countries, because yeah, obviously there's very, very talented actors and painters and presenters everywhere, so it'll be interesting to sort of see if it would translate. But yeah, I sort of I recommend to anybody going for it and sort of trying it out. I think it's, if nothing else, it's an opportunity to paint, and that's always fun anyway. But yeah, you get to meet other artists. I found it really interesting from both times that I've been on, sort of talking to the camera guys and stuff about their equipment and what they're sort of doing, sort of, as well as talking to some of the lighting guys, because that's just an area I think that I'm quite interested in general. It's sort of lighting and filming. And it's like, oh, these are people who are actually working in that field. That's exciting. Um, I definitely know that not everybody has that sort of want or interest in sort of talking to people like that. But sort of, I think that everyone who does go sort of is quite impressed with the um like equipment that's there, sort of the big boom cameras that are moving around on set and getting all the sort of like complicated shots where it sort of swoops in or whatever. It's definitely very exciting to see this massive like 18-foot crane sort of do these complicated movements to get those shots. But again, that's if you're interested in that sort of filming. I mean, I presume that there would be plenty of artists in like Uruguay that would be very willing and sort of happy to do it as well. Like I can't imagine that there isn't the demand for it. I just it just can be very complicated to get anything like that going because it's financially a risk for a lot of companies, I guess. So there's definitely that would stop. But it's when I've got this pink sort of mixed up. Let's go in for the lips. Now, the sort of there's a very evident, or at least it's what I'm sort of reading of this image. But there is like the lighting scenario sort of is akin to it being quite cold, quite cold and bright. Even though it's inside, it definitely feels like the light is quite fresh, and sort of making his face a bit like what's the term for when your skin sort of comes sort of a bit blushed because of the temperature, but trying to correctly draw. Let's see if I can try and get that freshness of that warmth down, and definitely with the direct light as well on the face, sort of flattening out that forehead because removing some of that texture. Okay, it's interesting how it sort of progresses in steps, sort of, or at least it feels like that. When I'm painting, sort of, it doesn't sort of gradually move one way or the other. It sort of moves up or down, so it either becomes better or worse. But it becomes better or worse in like chunks, jumps to that, rather than sort of gradually moving into that space. Quite a telling shadow, a highlight shape on the nose, sort of telling you what the angle of the nose is moving upwards. When am I paint? Hi, Dennis. Just knocking in the nostril. So, Dennis, when are you gonna come and talk nonsense with me on here if I can figure that out? I know that Dylan recently did some streams in which he had some people on talking as well. When I did it with Arube, it was complicated to get the audio sorted, and I wasn't even doing it, so I sort of just had to wait as he tried to figure out this very complicated thing in trying to get my audio to be captured by the this week. That sounds fantastic. Sounds lovely. But yeah, I imagine that there's got to be an easier way to do it. But if not as well, there's always that opportunity of using Audacity, I want to say it's called, and just recording both sort of sets of speak. I don't know. Yeah, like it's not about the. I think it's all about the quality of the conversation. You know, it doesn't matter if people can't see exactly what you're painting. It's sort of, as long as they can get the idea of what you're painting, and then sort of be able to see the image afterwards, to be like, oh yeah, that's what he was doing there. I think that sort of is more important, as well as if the conversation is good. Not saying that it would be. It'd probably be very stupid with us, but sometimes stupid is exactly what you need. Just like the idea of some texture on top of the hair, like I sort of quite like this background colour showing through, but it's not quite the right shape, so I'm just gonna sort of see if I can bring in that slight edge. No, that's very glad to sort of have you drop in, Den. Let's bring that down. No, up. Okay, okay, it's okay. It's something. It was like not hating it. I want to see if I can obscure that edge ever so slightly, though. Same but lighter. Let's try that mark again, but blending it in more to the background. Something like that. And let's also bring her down this edge of the beard. Putting in some fuzzy marks, sort of when that's more to disrupt the sort of edge, sort of make it feel like it's not at all straight, because it's not. So sort of trying to make that line feel as equally sort of disruptive as it actually is. As mentioned, sort of painting on top of this crew neck to sort of get the effect. You can see the paint. Yeah, you can see the crew neck underneath the sort of tip of the beard. A little bit more, just a teeny tiny bit more there. It's too much, too much. And let's bring that back down. Ooh, don't like it. Something. Okay, yeah, something like that. That's okay. That's fine. If it doesn't work further, I will continue to describe. Same sort of thing. Let's start adding some of the shadow shape that sort of obscures this. It's definitely quite warm still with that sort of light showing through, I guess, the light of the wall. Okay, and then something like that for the t-shirt. Similar on this side. That's way too dark. Let's lighten that up. Something like that. And then totally should have done this before painting the beard in, but shoulda, woulda, coulda. Let's bring in this neck value. And then let's start connecting the shirt and a jumper to the neck. So first there's that shadow that gets blocked by the crew neck. Okay, yep. And let's straighten that out. Something like that. Yeah. And then what's next? The separation of the value of the cheek and the edge here. There's definitely a lot of light sort of bouncing directly off this part of the face. So around the nose here, and then sort of going up, and then on this facet of the cheek here. Lots and lots of light sort of bouncing off that. Let's bring that down. I demand to see it, Alex, but I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening, whatever you end up doing. But yeah, send it to me on Insta or something. I would relish in seeing it. Bringing out shadow shape. No, yeah, I definitely sort of had a worry with this painting about halfway through that it was going to look awful. Um, but I feel like it's not in a terrible state at the moment. So hopefully, just some more sensible resolving of it uh, will be enough to allow me to be happy with it. Bring that in and then up. But I do want to reinforce that idea that this continues even though it's breaking there. And just the effect of a fade, or not fade, but like texture. Now, let's see. I've been trying this mark like a few times on various bits of work. But sort of it has varying successes, but to sort of load up the paint on the edge of the brush bristles and then pinch and spread the bristles and then sort of drag it along to sort of get almost like a barcode type of mark. But I think it works better in its subtleties and sort of not too obvious. Sort of that's, but sort of just to sort of play with the texture a bit. Hour 37 of streaming so far. Thank you very much, Skyless. Skyless. I am just going to fill up my water bottle. I will be back in one moment. So bear with me. Right, let's get back to it whilst remaining hydrated. Okay, so I guess it's about time that I give this eye, not this eye that I'm working on right now, but the other eye, sort of another look. Now, let me start drawing with this blue in order to find some of the shape. First shape like that, bring it down. Now, this shape here isn't incorrect, it's just the wrong value. Thank you very much, Chris. Nice to see you. Hopefully you're enjoying your free Sundays. Now, although I guess you haven't had a free Sunday yet, so ignore that statement. I hope that you will be enjoying your free Sundays until the new year. Now, this definitely is much higher, this value, because it's the same value as this side of the face. So let's knock something up that's a bit fresher, cleaner, but also has some body to it, so I can paint on top without it being having to wait for the surface to dry. Just sort of making sure that there's definitely a lot more paint on my brush than there is on the surface, so that the paint from the brush sticks to the surface and not the paint from the surface sticks to my brush. But let's bring in this shadow shape. So bring it up there. Now let's keep it similar in value, but cool or cooler. And then let's meet in the middle, maybe. Yes, but no. Right idea, but wrong execution. So let's re-attempt that mark again. Let's bring that up and across. Throw in this punch of an edge here as it comes down the eye bag. Roll this shadow shape, then rolls across before extending down. We're talking this inner shadow shape as well. And then let's see if we can navigate some of the cooler chromatic greys here. So something like that for the initial mark. And solidifying that shadow shape, because it is a very solid shape there. And yeah, let's see if I can get this correct sort of brightness of red in this edge of the shadow. Now, I think that because this edge of the this cast shadow, which is coming from the nose, so the light's hitting the nose, casting the shadow shape here. I think because the nose is translucent, or sort of because flesh is translucent to an extent, as it's passing right on the edge of the nose, obviously we're sort of the edge being relative to the sort of angle that the light is coming in. It passes through this sort of thin part of the nose and then projects some of the warmth of going subsurface scattering of going through the nose edge, I think around here, and as it hits this shadow shape, it becomes warm as a result of that. So I sort of, as always, I do hope that the instance of understanding why that shadow shape is there will hopefully make me be able to resolve it a bit better, because I suddenly understand why that light source is why it is, and then as a sort of result of that, I can sort of resolve it in the manner that it needs to be resolved in, is the hope, at least, of sort of that understanding of trying to figure out what you're currently observing and sort of why it then sort of looks the specific way it does. Definitely quite a lot of this blue reflected light coming in. No, I also need to, when I remember it, which is now, I guess, bring in this ear. And then that highlight and the shadow of the ear. Something like that. Now, let's extend this highlight out. And when I initially saw this reference, I was definitely really interested in the segments sort of here, and in a few places, I guess. It was just an idea that I had. It was like, yep, I can do this painting and I can try and incorporate this manner or this sort of effect into it. But yeah, really interested in trying to lose some of this edge into this shadow shape being cast on the wall. So sort of having the edge of the face and this highly blue cool shadow, this reflected cool shadow on the face, sort of lose itself in each other, sort of just to extend this mark, then sort of from all the way across. Let's also bring it down. Add some of this pink. And then bring that down and bring that up. Something like that, losing that edge. I know I said that I was going to work on the other eye, but shut up. Now let's see if I can knock in this. Now, again, sort of mentioned right at the beginning, there is this part here which is warm. I think it's warm from this sort of reflected light of his face bouncing against the wall. So there is sort of a band of warmth sort of as it moves down. And then let's start knocking in some of this. It's too dark. Something like that. Yeah, I think that's... Now, let's cool that down, though, on the outside, and also give that a sharper edge. Now, I also think that finding some of these values in these shadow shapes, I can start to use some of these values in this eye to resolve this eye as well. So maybe I knew secretly what I was doing. Words? Come on. My brain is dying apparently. Apparently, secretly, I knew what I was doing all along. Is what I was trying to say. One more sort of depth of shadow, which needs to follow the shirt more. Something like that. Smoosh, 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 smoosh. Yeah, okay, happy with that. Definitely need to, at the moment, it looks like he's got a bloody eye. Definitely want to take out some of that first, because that's just confusing. Something like that. And an approximate brown for the eye to start off with. It's definitely quite warm as well because of the amount of light hitting it. Right, so then the eye hood has this similar blue highlight on it, so we can draw in that first segment of the eye within the blue. And let's also bring a bit of that blue into this eyebrow as to make that value pattern of that blue light reflecting on the side consistent across the entire painting. Now, I think, and it definitely makes sense that he would be, I think that sort of also is helping me understand what's happening in this eye. Sort of just ever so slightly squinting because it's in more direct sunlight. I guess sort of there are parts of the eye which are fully exposed to the sunlight, so definitely makes sense. Let's bring in that shadow shape, but let's warm it up. And then now, definitely, I did. Ruddy was the word I was looking for. Ruddy cheeks, definitely got that sort of exposed to the cold effect happening in the cheeks. Let's just inject some pink into it to sort of make it have that effect, and then as a result sort of cool down up here in order to make it feel sort of a bit thinner, a bit bluer. Something like that. Again, let's try and control this eye shape. The issue, or one of the issues that I'm facing with it, is that I don't want to describe it too much because I want it to be lost in the shadow here. But without it, I need it to also read correctly. So sort of finding that fine line of the edge of the eye. Thank you very much, Sophia, for joining. Yeah, a little bit later than normal, as it was just done on spur of the moment, but I'm glad that you were able to join for some of it. Especially since a lot of it has just been me rambling about what I'm painting. Let's bring that down. I don't think it is very far of being done. Like, it's definitely not done yet. But I don't think it's too much further to sort of resolve. Which is lovely. But it does also mean that once it gets to this sort of stage, the decisions are less obvious, I guess, sort of more deliberated over. Let's see if I can punch up that reflected cool in this side of the nose. Now, I do like what's happening over here, but it is becoming a bit uncontrolled with the mark making, so let's just simplify some of those shapes a bit. No, this is same palette. The intense pink is up here, but yeah, so this is just the normal palette that I've been using recently. Part of that is definitely because I have been working with this palette this week, sort of working on paintings that I started a couple of months ago in this palette, and I've definitely have understood the palette in a different way since I last painted on some of these paintings. And it's been interesting to sort of navigate through sort of some of these sections that I'm redrawing or revisiting and sort of seeing where I'm sort of coming out with solutions now that I sort of have a bit of time with this palette. But one of the things that I've noticed is sort of this or something that I'm finding not necessarily difficult. I don't think difficult is the correct sort of term for it, but definitely wanting to try and resolve greys with it. And sort of, I thought, let's navigate through a painting with lots of greys and sort of see what I'm forced to do with it. So it's handling okay at the moment. Sort of, I do think that there is a way to be handling the palette in general to sort of navigate through the greys, which is a little bit different to how I have been painting with it in general, which is definitely helpful to know before, or sort of just helpful to establish. It's like, okay, to handle greys with this palette, I have to approach it like this. As always, I find I tried earlier in the week, I sort of was experimenting with this palette, and instead of the PR122 Intense Pink that I used the PR122 Magenta from Michael Harding, because I'm looking at giving away a few sets of the palette, and sort of was curious if I could make the palette sort of more accessible in where you could get the paint. And I've sort of gone about the paintings with the intense pink and sort of gotten quite used to it, I guess. And swapping that out for the magenta was just crazy. It was so intense, it's so powerful, overpowering, I think, for this palette, sort of. So it sort of immediately made me think, no, I need to actually put in this intense pink when I give this palette away, because part of it is that this intense pink has quite interesting ways of working with transparencies, but also like it works well with the colors in the palette, whereas I have sort of I'm pretty competent, I think, with my paint management and paint sort of navigation when I'm painting. Like it's not something that is like new or anything to me at this point, so I can definitely use colors within their subtleties. But yeah, the magenta was just dominating over the palette, so it's like, yep, okay. And yeah, like, I mean, that's part of the thing, Skyless, is when sort of the reason that I've become so interested in this palette is because it allows me to sort of navigate those areas sort of quite subtle, with quite a lot of subtlety. Now, last time I streamed before I was ill last Monday, or unwell on last Monday, I did say I was going to look at how to delete these bots, but alas, I have not. So sorry about that. But yeah, definitely sort of this entire palette is sort of built around balancing temperatures. And you've got sort of the intense cool with the blue, and then the intense warm with the permanent orange and Indian yellow. So you can sort of really push the palette quite a lot with those combinations of colors, and I sort of am continually sort of very happy with the way I have been able to push the palette in different paintings. I sort of still feel like there's so much to understand within this palette, and that definitely is sort of helping with a sort of mentality of choosing what to paint and how to paint, and sort of doing things which are smaller but are figuring out the palette. Sort of definitely has been a very clear motivator in order to sort of do smaller paintings, I guess. Whereas recently it sort of became that the small paintings were sort of everything I was doing, and they became a little bit boring, because they didn't have any sort of like figuring out to do, because I was using such a sort of a palette that I was so comfortable with, and the small paintings were sort of easier to resolve, that a sort of interaction of working on things which are more complicated with a simple palette, and then also sort of trying to resolve things which are difficult to resolve within a sort of limited palette. Like, because I could, get a bunch of grey paint. There was like different like tubes of grey values, and describe the background with that, and sort of describe the warmth within that. But no, it's sort of been its own interest of exploration to try and establish that within this sort of new ground of a palette. For me at least, that's definitely sort of a lot of my interest within this palette currently. I was thinking that, like, hopefully at some point as well, sort of I'll sort of work with this palette for a bit, sort of try and see what I can resolve out of that, and then if I feel at another point I need to change up the palette and resolve that and sort of think of a new palette, then that's sort of what I will do. I'm sort of quite open to that as an idea, and sort of just to have that space to experiment the possibilities of something within that. Like, I definitely would prefer, or sort of my goal or sort of want within this palette currently is that I can sort of do a body of work with it, and then maybe exhibit that body of work as a body of work, so you can see all the paintings together and see sort of the range of the palette, and that's sort of my the reason that I'm not necessarily showing works in progress of like the big pieces that I'm sort of working on at the moment. I mean, there's a few reasons. I want sort of the time in which you see the painting to be it in the stage in which it's being presented to you. I don't want it to be sort of in a mid stage where it's unfinished and sort of it be that might be the only time that people see that painting, and then that sort of is how that painting exists in people's minds in its wrongness. But that's just me, I guess. Bring down that shadow shape a little bit. And then redraw this bump in the cast shadow there. And let's drag some transparent but chromatic paint through to warm that up. Same up here. Let's add some might there, but actually let's cut that back. Now let's just redraw this eyelash. With that, let's just reduce this iris by a teeny tiny amount. It's better. Now the eyes are more similar in their size. And then something like that. And then now that I've brought that eye over, let's re-establish this eye hood being a bit lower. Something like that. Maybe this is done, or like marks away from it being done. What do we think? Other than free vert girls. Looking at the stream, just want to bring this around following the shape of the eye a bit more. No, knock that back ever so slightly. Further out here. And shadow there. No, yep, I think I'm calling this done. Yeah, I'm not convinced. The thing is that the standard procedure of this so far has been that I'll say a painting is done on the stream, and then I'll go upstairs and take photos of it, and then I will come back to it in the morning, realize that there's something I want to change, spend 10 minutes changing it, and then repost it. And if I could not do that and just sort of make sure it's fully resolved at this stage before sort of calling it quits, that would definitely be quite pleasant. Let's drag some orange through there just to give this texture of the beard and also lighten that up. Let me wax some thicker paint down on the nose, see if that brings it more to a more shape, more definite. Knock that back ever so slightly. So meet in the middle with that. I do think that I'm gonna bring this nostril in again, even that out. And then just bring that down. Something like that. I'm doing a lot of painting for someone who said that they thought this painting was dumb a second ago, but sometimes it'd be like that. Soften there, increase the chroma there, take out that. Dark valley without it being chromatic. It needs to be more chromatic for this painting. Clean up tear duct. Take some of the creaminess out of the eye because it's and then add this sort of textured highlight over here. Let's get that on the side of the brush so we can sort of drag it and let it break as it drags. Same sort of thing. Fade that up. It's definitely amazing how stodgy this paint can get when it's being worked, and I quite like it to have that sort of stodginess because I feel like it allows me to control the texture a bit more. But it's yeah, sometimes you want it to be stodgy and sometimes you want it to be sort of fluid when you put it on. It's sort of when you want it to be fluid it's stodgy, and when you want it to be stodgy it's fluid, you know, sort of little. And now I want to bring this more in front. And then to knock the edge of the hair back a bit. Let's also just quickly see what this looks like. Yeah, prefer that. Just increasing both the temperature and the value for the shadow shape, but now I just want to drag some dirt back over it, I think, to just scuff it up. Not have it be too clean. Like so. Okay, I think that's it done. I really need to shut up sometimes. Well, I say that. It is done. I just need to go like this in order to just allow you to know that although this is broken off here, it still separates beyond that. Now it's done. Right, I'm now calling this done for tonight. We will see if it remains done tomorrow morning. But no, thank you for the impromptu stream. It's been a fun little painting session. Definitely sort of felt good to just get something done as well. Especially since I wasn't streaming on Monday. So next stream is on Monday, Monday 19th. That is planning to be same time as it normally is, 8 o'clock. 6 o'clock UK time. That does have a prompt. So that will be sort of the start of a giveaway and for that painting session. Yes, I have 2 prompts in mind. And I guess it sort of depends on what I feel on painting on the day. One prompt is a still life related prompt, and one prompt is less. It's vaguer than that. For me, it will be a portrait, but it doesn't have to be a portrait. But yeah, I'll sort of give the details out on Monday. As to allow people to paint along with that in the opportunity of potentially winning something, painting, palette, set of paints. Not quite decided yet. But yes, I will catch you on Monday. And thank you very much for tuning in and listening to me ramble. Especially as I feel extra rambly this evening. Sort of part of the reason that I wanted to paint. But anyway, I will catch you soon. Catch you on Monday.